Well, hello there. How is everyone today? December 31st. Gosh, it's been a year, guys. Wow. Hello, my favorite people. Where's everyone? Let's see. Looks like we're getting together on this last day of the 2022. What a year. What a year. How is everyone doing so far? Are you guys excited to say goodbye to 2022? Thank it for all the goods and gosh, hope that all the less than goods and bads do not come back, right? We had the war this year that started on top of another war that was already there in Ukraine. So it was a year of a nightmare, so to speak. So let's hope for the better 2023. Of course, we can only hope and pray for peace. So that's a heavy heart for the 2022, of course. That's a year that will be remembered with a heavy heart by many people. I love you all, guys. I hope you're safe. I hope everyone is getting ready to celebrate. What about your big New York Times Square ball drop? Are they going to do that today? I know with the pandemic, there was a sight to see. I could not believe it when it was the pandemic times that the drop of the ball was. It's just like from the surreal movie of post-apocalyptic times. There was nobody allowed in the square. They had this plastic things flapping in the wind. City entertainers, big fences, security everywhere. I thought this is like post-apocalyptic movie. I cannot believe it. But that was a new year, the year before. So with the pandemic stuff, it was insane. So I don't know. I hope this streak of insane years ends soon. And let's hope to welcome 2023 and have some good predictions. Well, I have something fun for you here. I'll check your comments in a minute. Let's do something fun. Let me put my glasses and share my screen with you. Let's see. Talk about predictions. Well, guess who predicted a lot of things recently for the new year? Mr. Medvedev, former Russian president. Look at that. Let's read together. I'm sharing my screen. Number one prediction. Oil price will rise to $150 a barrel and gas price will top 5,000 per 1 cubic meters. Okay. We can see that because Russia, I believe they signed something that's going to be effective on February the 1st. To stop selling oil to the unfriendly people who want to place oil cap prices or something along these lines. Now that could probably affect the oil price very much so. Okay, Mr. Medvedev, we'll give you one. The number two, the UK will rejoin the EU. Okay, let me see comments. Anybody believes that? I don't know. I don't know. We have nobody wants to take the UK will rejoin the EU. I see that. Okay, well, see what happens. It's very possible. Have a little comment here, Jose Rivas. Hi, Elena. Thanks a lot for what you share information that everyone needs to know. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it. Thank you. So going further down in the list, Mr. Dmitry Medvedev predicts number three. The EU will collapse after the UK's return. Euro will drop out of use as the former EU currency. Okay, we can give him that one. We'll see what happens with EU. It does seem like it's making lots of decisions to negatively and adversely affect its members. Look at what they did with sanctions. That's insane. Number four, Dmitry Medvedev predicts, crystal ball here, drum roll number 4. Poland and Hungary will occupy western regions of the formerly existing Ukraine. Ooh, ooh la la. Interesting, interesting. And number 5 was probably the most, what he said, outrageous. I think he prefaced it saying that everybody makes outrageous predictions for 2023. Let us make some and let's do our part. So let's see if this tops his comment about being outrageous. Number 5, the Fourth Reich will be created, encompassing the territory of Germany and its satellites, i.e., Poland, the Baltic states, Czechia, Slovakia, the Kiev Republic. Hint, hint. You know what the Kiev is capital of? Ukraine, right? So he gives it the Kiev Republic instead of saying Ukraine. And other outcasts. Well, that's very generous of you, Mr. Medvedev. So he predicts a Fourth Reich. Ooh la la. Poland, Baltic states, Czechia, Slovakia, the Kiev Republic, and the other outcasts. Well, a little mean, but okay. Let's keep going. Number 6. The war will break out between France and the Fourth Reich. Europe will be divided, Poland repartitioned in the process. Well, what can we say? Well, it's not completely out of question that Poland seems to be willing to get into some type of fight. I don't know. They keep pushing for all kinds of I don't want to say troops on the ground, but yes, there is a lot of Polish soldiers now dying in Ukraine, which is tragic. I believe the last number I've seen about a month ago was over 1,000, 1,200, something like that, coming back to be buried in Poland after their deployment to Ukraine. Whether they're volunteers, I don't know. But a lot of things recently that keep happening. Poland is just a front runner. It wants to get in. Remember that missile that Zelensky claimed that it was a Russian missile that hit Poland, or 2 of them, and then he downgraded it, or they downgraded it to 1. It only took 2 weeks, right? But initial scoop was that 2 missiles from Russia and Poland. Yes, it's from Russia. Like, people, can you sit still and breathe? Do you want a nuclear war with Russia? Poland, wake up. So yeah, Medvedev makes this interesting prediction. So let's see. We have another great comment here with little hearts. Johnny Keene, let's see. Do I have anyone else here? Let's do the next prediction of what is the next portion of predictions for Mr. Medvedev. Let me see if we can. Yeah, I think he makes some predictions about United States. Wouldn't that be interesting? Let's see what he has to say about us. We'll have to do the next, how do I scroll this real quick and read it? Oh, yes, look at that. Yeah, so he predicts rather, outrageously so, as he claims, that the war will break out between France and the Fourth Reich. Europe will be divided, Poland repartitioned in the process. That was number 6. Number 7, Northern Ireland will separate from the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. Okay. Any takers? What do you guys think? A lot of things are very possible here, right? The world is becoming quite a crazy place, so very possible. The predictions next. So let's see what the next predictions are here. Number 8, the civil war will break out in the US. Oh my gosh, yes, US. California and Texas becoming independent states as a result. Okay, guys, go take your, what is it? Go to your safe room, panic attacks. Anybody feels like a panic attack, go to your safe room, breathe, have some tea. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev makes a 2023 prediction that number 8, that civil war will break out in US, United States. California and Texas becoming independent states as a result. Texas and Mexico will form an allied state. Elon Musk will win the presidential election in a number of states, which, after the new civil war end, will have been given to the GOP. That's interesting. Let's catch up the comment on Ireland, Paula Whelan. No number is not yet in favor of reunification of Ireland, sadly. Well, Mr. Medvedev makes all these different predictions. At least there is something to think about. I know he sort of poked fun at his own predictions, saying that everybody makes outrageous ones. Let us do our part and do some. But hey, not all of this is far-fetched. If things keep going the way it is, put it this way, if anybody would tell me in 2014 that any type of a violent fight of sorts or any altercation will happen between Russia and Ukraine. In fact, I had a wonderful client of mine, as you know, I'm a businesswoman, not a career politician. If you want to call me one, call me a stateswoman. So in 2014, when Russia and Ukraine had that huge conflict, and when Obama and Biden and Hillary sponsored the coup in Ukraine, remember, yes, credit to Obama, Biden, Hillary, Victoria Nuland, McCain was there every week flying to Ukraine, supporting protesters against legally elected president of Ukraine, Yanukovych at that time. Hello. So when that coup happened and Russia and Ukraine had this huge altercation over Crimea, and of course the Nazi regime that came to power in Ukraine, people of Crimea didn't want to do anything with it. So didn't people of Donbass, but that's a different story. Crimean people, because Russia already had the lease of its fleet and nuclear submarines there, that Russia and Ukraine signed in 2011. That lease was supposed to last until 2043. So Russian troops, Russian fleet, everything was there. And that's another question. Ukraine, do you want to be independent? So you want to be independent, but then you're signing a lease with a quote unquote foreign army being in your quote unquote territory in Crimea. From 2011, the lease was continued, re-signed to 2043. So do you want to be independent Ukraine, or do you want to have foreign army occupying your quote unquote Crimea territory? That's a separate question. But so in 2014, when Obama and all these good guys, quote unquote, Biden's and McCain and John Kerry and Pelosi, and I think Romney's, all these wonderful people who just like to have regime changes, Lindsey Graham, all of these dudes and ladies, political dinosaurs, helped sponsor the coup together with EU in Ukraine in 2014. Russian and Ukrainian people found themselves in odds. And I had a client calling me that basically the day surrounding that, and she said, Elena, I can't believe it. Will Russians and Ukrainians fight? And I said, you know, anybody who would make Russians and Ukrainians fight each other violently with weapons, I don't care, that's an ultimate evil. It's impossible. This cannot be happening. It cannot be. Well, guess what? Just a few years later, and few actually weeks later, there was some light fighting in Crimea, but mostly peaceful. But few years later, now Russians and Ukrainians are fighting full-fledged war. So if somebody told me that in 2014, that this entire war on top of the war to end the war, starts in 2022 with the scale that it is at, Russians and Ukrainians, brothers, sisters, brothers-in-law, family members, they're all on both sides. And they're killing each other because some corrupt politicians want to line their pockets and their donors' pockets. That's what it's all about. And of course, to change regime in Russia in the meantime, grab Russia's resources while they're at it. We remember Madeleine Albright in her day, may she rest in peace, Madeleine. She said once, I watched her interview, she said, well, it's not fair that Russia has all these resources. Putin must share. Russia must share all their resources. Well, of course, Russia has the resources. You thought this war just was about some bad people and some good people? No, it goes deep as a rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. But on the surface, of course, there's lots of very real politicians are making some very real money, and that's why they don't want peace talks. And when Zelensky came to Washington the other day, at the conference, Biden and Zelensky both standing there and lying to us. Biden goes, oh, Putin doesn't want peace talks, so he just never wanted peace talks. We're for peace, but Putin is all that evil. Putin, he just doesn't want to talk peace. Really? Open Russian newspapers. Of course, I know they're banned now and they are being suppressed because, of course, truth is so scary, right? Western media, truth is scary. So every time Putin speaks, or Maria Zakharova, Russian foreign I guess, affairs spokeswoman, every time she speaks, Lavrov, a top diplomat of Russia, every time they speak, they all say, we are open to negotiations, we're open to peace. But of course, Zelensky doesn't want just peace now. He wants it to be just peace. So let's put Russia on UN trial without Russia and basically make Russia fulfill all these 10-point peace plans, meaning Russia pays reparations, Russia removes the army, Russia gives us everything, Russia is going to pay us restitutions, all the good stuff without Russia. And Zelensky is going to preside over this basically lynch over Russia. While then, of course, if that's your version of peace, Zelensky, we do know that you're basically saying you don't want to negotiate. And of course, Zelensky a few months ago signed a pledge. The dude signed a little pledge. He had the ceremony with two other guys standing on his sides. And he said, I am pledging that I will negotiate, but with a different president of Russia. Imagine. So I'm telling you, people, it's a lot of wild predictions from Mr. Medvedev, but if you really think about it, it's not so far-fetched because the world is becoming a crazy place. Of course, we have to watch for China and Taiwan. I think they have it in their program that they want to reunify now with Taiwan. I don't want to be saying maybe by 2027. They just recently adopted it at their party summit or something. I would double check, but it seems like a lot of things are happening. We'll see if Erdogan and Syria will negotiate with Assad. Maybe that would be at least more or less a better outcome. But then again, you always have to worry if one war sort of subsides, another one begins. And we now know that several Congress people admitted, and several officials in Defense Ministry of the United States admitted that, yes, we couldn't handle both Afghanistan war and Ukraine war, so we got out of Afghanistan. So here we are. We are in Ukraine now. So we have to watch out for all these warmongers and how close we are to nuclear war. And it wouldn't surprise me if, like Scott Ritter, a famous a weapons inspector for UN formerly, he said, we're on the brink of nuclear war and we may not wake up tomorrow. That's real, people. Everybody grills their hot dogs and, goes, has a drink in the bar. You have to understand, this is insane. Ukraine is claiming it's going to win against a nuclear power Russia. What? Of course, he cannot do it unless NATO gets involved. Of course, we know NATO likes to get involved. So will NATO get involved? Will this become a nuclear war? All the bets are possible. Let's see. Next one. Let's do some comments in between. So next prediction from Dmitry Medvedev. Well, Elon Musk will win the presidential election. Well, last time I checked, I think he was not born in the United States. Unless Elon Musk tries to hint to us that maybe that will not matter. After the quote-unquote civil war in the United States that he is predicting, you could check it on the screen. I posted it in here. Thank you, Johnny Keane. I appreciate it. Abraham Sharif, watching from Ivory Coast. Hello. That's very nice. Let me see. Johnny Keane, Zelensky, he bent the Z, lol. Yes, exactly. Everybody calls Zelensky Elensky because he pretty much banned the Z because, gosh, it reminds the Russian military insignia. So with that said, Biden recently called Zelensky at the press conference when Zelensky visited Washington, Belensky. So definitely a lot of spellings of his name. Here we have Mikhail. Is Mikhail from Germany? Hello. Let's see. Anybody else wants to say hello? I am hoping that there are some comments I'm thinking on YouTube. So what do I do? Next prediction. Number 9, Dmitry Medvedev. All the largest stock markets and financial activity will leave the US and Europe and move to Asia. Wow, really? Very much so. The world is becoming multipolar. We know that. Unfortunately, Biden is hell-bent to make sure that we print so much money and inflation is skyrocketing. And then the next thing you know, we freeze and arrest the funds from foreign countries we don't like that keep them in dollars. Guess what everybody is going to do? They're going to make sure they don't keep it in dollars anymore. Then what? Yep. So Biden really is helping to bring America to its demise. Sorry to say that, but it's insane. We have Maksud from New York. Hello there. We have Wendy Walker from Canada. How is Canada? Oh gosh, you're just like us. You have a large Ukrainian diaspora there, and unfortunately, they're supporting the current Zelensky regime. You guys need to write some letters, but I know you probably feel like that that doesn't work. Oh, that's very sad. Let me see. So the next prediction. Number 10. The Bretton Woods system of monetary management will collapse, leading to the IMF and World Bank crash. Euro and dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currencies. Digital fiat currencies will be actively used instead. What interesting. That's interesting. Let me see. Yes, Mikhail, you are from Germany. Looks like I have a good memory there. Let's see. So Johnny Keane has an opinion on the digital currency, good digital and bad digital. What do you guys think about these NFTs? I think Trump just recently released some of these NFTs that show his image where he stands there with a Superman t-shirt opening his I guess, jacket, and it has this Superman logo in there. And of course, he promoted and saying, every world something needs a Superman. So everybody thought something major is coming. But well, Trump, being the marketer that he is, released some NFT cards, I believe. So I don't know. Everybody seems to be a little crazed about them. If you have some NFT cards, let us know. That would be interesting to know. We have Johnny Keane again. Okay, people, start typing some comments because Johnny Keane is going to be the king of this broadcast with his comments. You do a great job. Thanks for your program. I love it. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next one. So basically, that was it. Dmitry Medvedev ended with saying season greetings to you all. And he said, Anglo-Saxon friends, and they're happily oinking, and I don't think there is something nice in the end of that sentence. So it does say here on his Twitter page that he is a deputy chair of Security Council of the Russian Federation and formerly a president of Russia from 2008 to 2012, Medvedev. Well, if you really guys think about it, Medvedev has been really visible recently in Russia. Some people, I think Alexander Mercurius on the Duran channel and Alex Christoforou were discussing Medvedev the other day. And a lot of people think that maybe Medvedev has been prepared to take over from Putin at some point. Of course, he already did in 2008-2012. He was a Russian president. But he recently went to meet with Chinese leader Xi, Chairman Xi, and then, he just recently became, I think, the deputy of this, what I just read, the Russian Military Something Council. So he's a pretty big deal. And what's interesting, I've seen that Putin made a speech saying to people of Russia what the year brought and what's next, and wished everybody Happy New Year. And then Medvedev also had a broadcast and said a few words. That's unusual. And of course, Russian defense minister also said a few words. And of course, he finished with the fact that he said, our victory is undeniable. We will win. Shoigu, Russian Minister of Defense, spoke and gave his New Year's greetings. So a lot of people do their New Year's greetings. And a lot of people do New Year's resolutions. What are yours, guys? Let me have some water. I've been talking so much. I guess everybody is baking and cooking because it's New Year's Day. And we can stop sharing the screen from Mr. Medvedev and just see here what we have. Oh, I have some more comments. Let's see some more comments here. Oh, Armin bro, I like you. Look at that. You always such a supportive, nice comments. Thank you very much. Great, honest, realistic show. Thanks from New York. Yes. Say hello to New York. By the way, I've never been to New York. Maybe one day. I have been invited many times. How is New York? You know, I mean, how you guys do? I mean, cultural life must be stellar. You have all the top entertainment. Gosh, and architecture and skyscrapers, all of my favorite things, right? Thank you very much for your comment, Armin, bro. Anybody else we have? Let's see. I'm trying to do this really quick. Sergey Milansky, I see your comment. Who do you mean? Who are you talking about? I see that you are trying to say that somebody is destroying its own citizens. I'm assuming you're talking about Zelensky, right? That's what I'm thinking, that who you're talking about. So even though I do understand what means these two first words of your comment, that's pretty much calls Zelensky like the last person in the world, the guy who destroyed its own citizens. I agree with you. He definitely doesn't care, and he does not want to save Ukraine, because if he did, first of all, when he was elected in 2019, you guys can scroll my page, you can find that video. When Zelensky ran for office, the war in Ukraine was already in. Like I said, it started in 2014 with Ukraine started bombing eastern Ukraine area. The people who didn't want to submit to coup government, which West sponsored the coup and took down elected president of Ukraine. Imagine that. And Victoria Nuland, our Secretary of Eurasian Affairs at the time, she started, I think, Obama appointed her, but I think Hillary Clinton, she worked under her for a little bit. I'd have to double check, but I think she started from Hillary. And then, of course, there was Biden not administration, vice president, and McCain. All these people, they were all together bringing down legally elected president in Ukraine in 2014. It started late 2013. So with that said, when Ukraine started bombing eastern Ukraine and it was going on, Zelensky in 2019 ran for presidency, right? He played a president in the TV show. The TV show was called Servant of the People. Famous oligarchs sponsored that show, at least co-sponsored. Of course, Zelensky is his own businessman as well, a pretty successful entertainer career in his life. But so when Zelensky played the president in the show, and the show was called Servant of the People, very popular show in Ukraine. By the way, in that very show, it shows that Ukraine falls apart and splits in many pieces. I don't know what's so funny about that, but apparently whoever the producers of the show were, they considered it funny. And so it's sort of a comedy slash, I don't know, dramedy. If you think about Zelensky playing the president, he actually played a teacher who by serendipity becomes president. And then he stands and stares at this map of Ukraine, and it has all these little parts. So I don't know, prophetic show or what? So when Zelensky ran for office in 2019, he promised that if he is the president, then Ukraine will stop shelling Donbass, which is eastern Ukraine area. And that's why people voted for him. But he never did. He became president, gave his dog and pony show, his Hollywood production, gave inauguration speech saying, our first order of business is to stop shelling in Donbass. Everybody applauded. And that was the end of the first order of business. Never happened. Never happened. The war and the shelling of Ukraine by the eastern Ukraine, the Donbass region, the Lugansk and Donetsk, and those surrounding areas is continuing to this day. So Zelensky didn't deliver on his promise, but when he became a president, the parties that is backing him, again, also the name of the show, Servant of the People. So his show has the same name as his political party. Well, I guess we can take it very safely as entire thing is just a show. And in recent few years, former chief of staff of Zelensky himself, his name is Andrei Bogdan. If you guys know, you can Google his interview. Of course, he interviews and speaks in Ukrainian and Russian, and obviously I'm fluent in both, so I can watch either way. He basically said that he left Zelensky's office as a chief of staff. It sounds like he was let go or they had differences. But when Andrei Bogdan was asked why and what he thinks of Zelensky, he said, well, I think, he said, Zelensky sold the idea. All he cares about, Zelensky, is applause and ratings. He constantly checks his Facebook profile. He constantly checks his likes and his, kudos, how people approve of him. And when the interviewer asked Mr. Bogdan, who is, again, former chief of staff of Zelensky, and the guy who helped Zelensky run and win presidency, interviewer asks this guy Bogdan and says, well, why does Zelensky lie? He lied to me personally several times, and this was small things. Interviewer, Mr. Gordon, he's asking Bogdan. And Bogdan says, oh, but you don't understand Zelensky. He's not lying. He's acting. In his mind, he's not lying. He is acting. I thought that was very profound. So former Zelensky's chief of staff impression of Zelensky is that when other people feel that Zelensky is lying in his own mind, he doesn't feel like he is lying. He just is acting. Oh my gosh. And that was very insightful from former chief of staff of Zelensky. Unreal people. And of course, the same interview goes to say, Mr. Bogdan said that nobody works in the office of the president. Zelensky has another chief of staff now after Bogdan was let go. His name is Mr. Yermak. And I know everybody is asking, is Yermak really the one running the country, not Zelensky? Mr. Bogdan was asked that question too. And he said, well, Yermak sits in Zelensky's cabinet in his office. Bogdan said he was not allowed to sit in Zelensky's office, or at least he didn't have the guts to do it. But Mr. Yermak, current chief of staff of Zelensky's, he sits right in Zelensky's office, which everybody who taped that interview found that it was quite odd that Zelensky is not in his office. And who is running the show is his basically new chief of staff, Mr. Yermak. So Mr. Bogdan, again, made interesting observation when asked about how was it to work with Zelensky, what Zelensky does all day. Well, Andrei Bogdan said, well, all they do is they do different PR campaigns. Okay, they're going to go and deliver flowers and lay them down in a ceremony someplace. Okay, then there is a next flower ceremony. Then there is a next photo shoot. Then there is a next photo shoot. So according to Zelensky's former chief of staff, Mr. Bogdan, nobody is working. He said in his interview that it's very frustrating that the president of Ukraine and the people who work in the cabinet of the president, they should be doing, he said, a lot of bureaucratic jobs. You have to sign papers, you have to talk to people, you have to do things, you have to move this country forward. But he said that they are not doing anything. They are just pushing paper if they have a chance, but mostly rush from one photo shoot to the next. It was pretty shocking. So no wonder Ukraine has been run by pretty much United States and EU, that if all Zelensky cares, according to his former chief of staff, is ratings, Facebook likes, the new photo shoot. And remember that photo shoot that Zelensky and his wife did for Vogue cover? Are you kidding me? Your people are dying in your country, and you find nothing better to do than pose for the Vogue, a fashion magazine photo shoot cover. Really? And of course, Mrs. Zelensky, when she comes to United States, instead of asking for peace as a proper first lady, which is actually governed by diplomatic protocol, what the first lady should be talking about, peace, right, Mrs. Zelensky? But no, she asked United States for weapons. So long story short, guys, let me see, who do I have? A lot of talk about Zelensky and different things. We have Walter Eugene Burned. Hey, Elena from Cass County, Michigan. Yes, love it. Thank you, Walter. Thank you. Great seeing you. Who do we have? Thanks, Walter. I appreciate it very much. I remember years ago, Walter, I believe when I gave my speech at the Cass County Republican Party, which was, I was kindly invited to talk about my experience living in USSR. Walter helped to record that interview. Thank you, Walter, for doing that. It's good memory, and the great people that I met there, including yourself. Barry, Ukraine citizens are victims of this Ukraine corrupt leadership. Absolutely. Absolutely, Barry. You see, here's the problem. Nobody really understands what Ukraine is, what Russia is. Let me clue you people in. If you remember USSR, right? Union of Socialist Soviet Republics, the entity that was created that consisted of 15 republics on the ashes of the Russian Empire when Bolshevik Revolution happened in Russia in 1917. So then we had Russian Empire, and then Bolsheviks took power via revolution, and the Russian Empire became no more. So they called that country Union of Socialist Soviet Republics. And republics were 15, sort of like United States. We have 50 states and we're called United States. They were called United Soviet Socialist Republics, and we have 50, they had 15. One of those republics, they created them. You see, Russian Empire didn't have the 15 territories or 15 republics. This was all Bolsheviks' creation. And their national policy was one of Lenin's goals. They were actually very much promoting all different nationalistic sort of innuendos or inclinations. So each one of those 15 republics had hundreds and hundreds of different ethnic groups living in them. Ukraine has, I don't know, over 100 nationalities living in it right now, but it's called Ukraine, as if Ukraine is the only nationality and ethnic group living in Ukraine. It's not true. So Ukraine has over 100 nationalities or ethnic groups that live in the territory of current Ukraine. Russia has a couple of hundred as well. So in other words, the former Soviet Union was very diverse as to ethnic groups. It's insane how many beautiful different cultures can live peacefully together. And there was never a problem. Everybody spoke Russian as the main language in USSR. And your second language would be, if you are in one of these 15 republics, in case of Ukraine, Bolsheviks called that territory Ukraine. Never Ukraine was mentioned before in history, until Bolshevik called that territory of former Russian Empire Ukraine. And when Ukraine became independent in the 90s, it's just inherited the name Ukraine. But that's where all the problems started. Because you see, I have a nice theory about this. Why do we all get along very famously here in America? It's because America, United States, is very neutral name, very neutral. Nobody can claim it. It describes any particular nationality or ethnic group, right? And we have all kinds. We're a melting pot here in America. But the problem of the Soviet Union, they had a melted pot, but they plucked the Bolsheviks, the Soviets, they plucked the particular ethnic groups and put them on the forefront and called large territories by the name of representing one ethnic group. But it was never a problem during Soviet time, because in the Soviet time, they were actually promoting the friendship between republics of Soviet Union. We as children had different shows where we supposed to have researched the culture of another republic of Soviet Union, dress like it, make their favorite food, sing their favorite song and dance. So in Soviet Union, they did sort of promote the friendship versus animosity, as right now in independent Ukraine, all of a sudden, when people, while Ukraine was part of Soviet Union, they were speaking Russian as the main language. I know, I was there. Anybody who wants to challenge me of that, let's not go there. So when Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union, Russian was the main language, second language in Ukraine. You could study it at school. It was pretty much mandatory Ukrainian as a second language in your school. But when the Soviet Union collapsed and Ukraine started to get invaded by the Westerners who would like to grab Ukraine and break it away from Russia so they could weaken Russia, have regime change in Russia, get Russia's resources, you get the picture, right? So all the foreigners come in Ukraine and they start telling Ukraine, oh, Ukraine, now you're independent. You better start forbidding all this Russian language because otherwise you're just a Russian vassal state. And so Ukraine, instead of understanding that for the last 70 years, at least, because Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union for at least as long as that lasted, for 70 years, generations of people grew speaking main language Russian. But the current day Ukraine bans Russian, bans it, burns the books, destroys monument. Odessa city just recently dismantled the Catherine the Great monument. At least I've seen the picture. They were in the process. They vandalized it several times. Then they voted online with no legal due process. Few people said, yes, we want it removed. So last time I've seen they were dismantling it. I don't know how far they went. But so everything Russian now is being destroyed. Russian Orthodox Church has been forbidden, and Zelensky has a war on church. The soldiers are closing churches. Russian Orthodox Church, the Russian Patriarchy is forbidden. Anybody pro-Russian. So it reminds me of America. In order to be canceled, all you have to say is you're pro-Trump. And then you become immediately canceled. Oh, those Trumpers, oh, those whatevers. So they label you to cancel you. And the same is done in Ukraine now. If they want to fight dissent, all they need to do is say, oh, this party is pro-Russian. Let's ban it. Oh, this church is pro-Russian. Let's ban it. Never mind that the church only has been for thousands of years in the Russian Moscow Patriarchy, and that's church's internal business. Who they consider their patriarchy, Zelensky and Poroshenko, former Ukrainian president, who mingled in the church affairs. We know that in 2018, 2019, and broke away the Church, Orthodox Church of Russia into the two parts and created independent Ukrainian church. Yes, Ukrainian president mingled in the church's affairs, Poroshenko, before Zelensky. It's insane. So Ukraine's becoming this state that all of a sudden forgot generations of people who spoke Russian and still speak Russian. But the funny part is when you watch Ukrainian soldiers' videos that they take on the front lines, they all speak Russian. Majority of them speaks Russian. So they're fighting Russians. They call themselves Ukrainians. They speak Russian. What? But they cannot call themselves Russian, God forbid, because they have to be called Ukrainian. So even if you're Russian in Ukraine or you identify as Russian, or even if you're ethnic Russian, that's forbidden to be in Ukraine. You have to say you're Ukrainian. This is madness, people. And Biden and Pelosi tells us that we are supporting democracy. This is insane. Ukraine has become basically a Nazi state. If you like it or not, Google it, research it. If you don't understand that the May 9th, 1945, which is a victory day, right, in Ukraine and as Russia, as well as 15 former republics of USSR, which now became states. Yes, Russian people, including Ukrainian people, including Kazakh people, including Turkmenistan people, including Armenian people, including Azerbaijani people, including Jewish people, including people from former Baltic states, some of the people who live there, who actually did take participation in fighting Hitlerism in 1945, the people celebrate the 9th of May, the Victory Day, right? But not in Ukraine anymore. If you, God forbid, celebrate Victory Day, you are hounded by Nazis, and veterans of the World War II get beat up by Nazis. Their monuments get desecrated. Their graves are desecrated and vandalized. And you're telling me that's democratic Ukraine, and I'm supporting with my taxpayers' dollars this nonsense, this Nazi state? Americans and British and other people from entire world were fighting in World War II. protecting us, saving us from Nazis. And now in Ukraine, it's glorified to be a Nazi. Yeah, the Nazi, like a real Nazi, because the Stepan Bandera, the follower of Hitler in 1940s, when Hitler occupied Ukraine, he was and now hailed as Ukrainian hero. Yes. And so if you support him, you're good. But if you support World War II veterans in Ukraine who fought against Hitler, no, you're banned. You're silenced. You're suppressed. You're beaten up. You're harassed by freaking Nazis. You cannot gather and have a parade honoring World War II veterans. What? So our taxpayers' dollars are paying for this nonsense while we are being told that we're saving democracy in Ukraine. Nothing, people, could be further from the truth. Sorry if I talk too much, but gosh, there's so much to say. And every time there is new people, so maybe you guys didn't hear everything I have to say. I'll keep going down here. We have Mark. You're me. I'm watching you from Liberia. Hello, Liberia. That's perfect. Opa, we got an interesting one. We have Tony Mirchevsky, Slava Sovetskaya Ukraina. I can even read it. This is in Russian. It says, glory to Soviet Ukraine. Well, I have to say, Tony, I remember Soviet Ukraine, and Soviet Ukraine was nothing like current Ukraine. In Soviet Ukraine, at least, you know, we're not talking about the regime and all that stuff, but at least you were free to speak Ukrainian and Russian. You were free to teach at the school. You were supposed to respect each other's culture. And now we're saying, oh, those were the bad communists. Well, look at that. The bad communists had it better than Zelensky. They at least didn't have people beat up because they speak a different language. But in Zelensky's time, which is supposed to be this fantastic quote unquote democracy, they do beat people for speaking another language. Believe it? And if anybody wants to summarize this war, if people really don't understand, it's like, you know, Ukraine and Russia used to be a part of one big country, kind of like United States. We have many states, right? And all of a sudden, that one big country that Ukraine and Russia was a part of broke into pieces, and now pieces are fighting each other. So imagine, God forbid, if United States broke into pieces, into individual states, and the states would start fighting each other. You definitely would have families in both states. You would have family members, basically one in one army, another in another army. That's a tragedy what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, because there is Ukrainians who live in Russia, there is Russians who live in Ukraine. They have family members, they intermarried. It was one country. They have children, grandchildren living in the cities from Russia to Ukraine, from Ukraine to Russia. So if you really want to summarize this war, it's Russian Ukrainians fighting Ukrainian Russians. That's it. It's a bloodshed of brotherly nations that have intermarried over the at least last 70 years of Soviet Union, while they were all one country, and going back centuries before then. It's insane what's happening. And I feel tragically so deeply for both Russians and Ukrainians. And I'm only saying Russian and Ukrainians, meaning people who live on the territory of Russia and Ukraine, because obviously Russia has multiple national and ethnic groups, and so does Ukraine, okay? And by the way, for those who do not remember why I keep bringing World War II and how it's despicable that Ukraine disrespects World War II veterans while giving former Nazi collaborators state-honored funerals. Google it up. In the Western Ukraine, when once in a while they keep discovering the remains of the former Nazi collaborators of Stepan Bandera, SS Division, Galicia members, Google it up. They actually dress up in Nazi uniforms in Western Ukraine and give them with state officials and city officials attending funeral, Nazi uniforms, real ones, just like in the movies, just like in reenactment, only it's not reenactment. It's for honor burial of former Nazis who, on behalf of Hitler, slaughtered hundreds and thousands of Jewish people, Russian people, even Ukrainian people who they didn't like, Gypsy, Romani people, all ethnic group you can name. Stepan Bandera followers did that during the Hitler occupation of Ukraine. But guess what? Stepan Bandera in Ukraine now hailed as a national hero. What? Yes, and his slogan, glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Pelosi speaks in Congress, that same slogan. She was doing their little routine with Zelensky, stand-up comedy in Congress. He says glory to Ukraine, and she says glory to Ukraine, or hail Ukraine, hail Ukraine, hail heroes, hail. It's insane. That was Stepan Bandera's a Nazi collaborator slogan of his party. Yes. So why is World War II important? Because on behalf of Soviet Union, do you know how many people died? Do you know how many people died? Google it up. Official number, 27 million. 27 million. There isn't a family, and whether in Russia or Ukraine or former republics or Armenia or Azerbaijan or Turkmenistan or Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, even Baltic republics, when they used to be part of Soviet Union, there were people of the former Soviet Union republics that fought Hitler and fascism and won in World War II, and with American soldiers and with British soldiers, honorably so, defeated Hitler. 27 million is official number. I've seen that unofficial number as more along the lines of 47 million. So every May 9th in Russia, and it used to be in Ukraine, but now it's not, because Ukraine, you see, doesn't like to honor World War II veterans. It would rather honor Nazis like Bandera, who collaborated with Hitler. So people of Russia at this time, and other possibly republics of Soviet Union, but we're talking about Russia versus Ukraine, on the May 9th, they come out and march, holding the photographs of their loved ones. Each family has either lost a son, a loved one, a father, a grandpa, a mother, a granddaughter, grandmother, aunt, uncle, a family member, brother-in-law, sister-in-law. Imagine the amount, millions of people, millions died on behalf of former Soviet Union fighting Hitlerism, okay? So these people call it immortal regiment. They come out in the streets and orderly parade holding a little photographs on the a special handle. And when you look, it gives you goosebumps, because all you see is photographs. Oh my gosh, I'm going to tear up. The photographs are black and white, because in those days, mostly you had black and white photography. And you see the descendants of all the people marching through the streets. The people who are grateful. People who remember the sacrifice of the heroes during World War II, who fought Hitler. But not in Ukraine. What do you have in Ukraine? Oh, yay! They have also a march. What march? Oh, on Stepan Bandera, Hitler collaborator's birthday. 100-some years birthday recently. Every year they have a parade devoted to Stepan Bandera, Hitler collaborator. Downtown capital Kiev. He is the one who gets erected monuments in his honor. The streets are named in his honor. Well, Ukraine recently renamed the street in honor of Azov Battalion instead of former Red Army, I think Marshal or General, some dignitary who fought Hitler. So now that guy's name is no longer a street name. Now the guy who fought Hitler, his name is not honored and is being removed and replaced with the name of Azov Battalion, who openly professes all kinds of neo-Nazi ideology. And if you don't think Azov Battalion professes that, Google interview with Andrei Bouquet, the French medic. He used to be special forces. He actually traveled to Ukraine, and he gave an interview to French radio. The interview is on YouTube. You could all scroll pieces of it on my page. Yes, he was embedded in Ukraine, helping Ukraine as a medic, and he worked with Azov Battalion. He tells you, and he said, I'm well aware of what I'm saying, and I have everything to back it up. And he tells you what Azov Battalion was telling him when he worked with them that they would like to do to various ethnic groups. So Jewish groups, Black people, yeah, it was insane. So Adrian Bouquet interview to SUD Media, French media on YouTube. Yeah, listen to it. So, and that's who the Ukraine military officially now has as part of its military. The Azov Battalion recently, its members recently toured Washington, D.C., met with our congressman. How exciting. And guess what else? One of the Azov Battalion members just recently toured, drum roll, guess, Israel. Yes, Israel is receiving Azov Battalion. Are you people nuts in Israel? It's a friendly reference, right? Wake up what you are doing. Of course, few years ago, United States Congress made a resolution not to make sure that no funds go to Azov Battalion because of their affiliation with neo-Nazi ideology. United States Congress said it, it's on paper, it's in writing. But now, all of a sudden, we forgot about it. Now we bring Azov Battalion into our Congress, and Azov Battalion tours United States and also Israel. Israel, you have to really wake up. You have no idea what you're playing with. That's all I have to say about that. Great job on history. I like it. Yes, Wendy Walker. Catherine the Great was German. That's a great comment. The monument to the Empress of Russia in Odessa that now Ukrainian nationalists can stand. The lady only founded the city they live in, and her favorite, Mr. Potemkin, founded another city nearby, Nikolaev, which Ukraine now renames Mykolaiv. That's another story. So basically, that whole area was built up during Russian Empire, and Russia brought engineers and brought workers and built a lot of shipbuilding because there is Crimea, there is lots of rivers, and there is access to the sea. So, but surprising factor about Ukrainian nationalists disliking Empress Catherine the Great so much, deeming her Russian, well, she was German by birth. And till the end of her day, she spoke with an accent in Russian. Sort of like I speak with an accent, but hey, you know, some people find it actually pretty interesting to listen to. I'll take it. Gives me a little edge, right? Something unique. But you're absolutely right, Wendy. So if they want to send their grievances, Odessa people, for founding the very beautiful city of Odessa with the most luxurious opera house in Europe, as gorgeous opera house right downtown, with famous architecture, famous monuments. It's just gorgeous all the way through. If they don't like it, and if they despise Catherine the Great, let them send the letter to Scholz, because she was by birth German. She was converted to Russian Orthodox religion, took a new name, and she did speak with an accent till the end of her day, but she obviously did a great job building the Ukrainian cities, which at the time were Russian Empire cities, and only after Bolshevik took power now are called Ukrainian cities. Let me do one other sideline. You see, guys, when Ukraine became independent and they started this frenzy of eradicating everything Russian with Western help, of course, we're financing this entire operation, Ukraine equals anti-Russia project. So Ukraine started renaming everything. They renamed people. They renamed cities. So like Odessa is a city, and in Russian you spell it with two letters S, Odessa, S-S-A in the end. But Ukrainians renamed it. In Ukrainian, it lost one of its S. So it's Odessa with one S. Then there is a city called, let's say, Nikolaev, that was named after St. Nicholas. That was during Russian Empire when the city was founded. So Ukraine now renamed it, exchanging N for M and I for Y. So they call it Mykolaiv. They renamed their own capital Kiev. Kiev was always called Kiev. But no, now you can't say Kiev because, oh, that's Russian pronunciation. You have to say Kyiv or Kyiv, like some people actually nicknamed it. In other words, they took Russian Empire cities that were built by Russian emperors and by Russian people, together with some Ukrainians who lived in the areas nearby villages, and now renamed it in Ukrainian language, and somehow they became Ukrainian. And they shouldn't have any Russian history, no affiliation with Russian Empire, no affiliation with Russian emperors who built those cities, no affiliation to Russian people, ban their language, ban their church. This is all our cities, we built them. Oh yeah, and they rewrite history. Did you know that Genghis Khan, the guy who conquered like that whole territory, the Mongol and Tartar yoke, if you remember, well, Ukrainian historian now came up that he was Ukrainian. Can you believe it, right? So we don't have Ukraine mentioned anywhere until 1917 when Bolsheviks created it, right, and gave it the name Ukraine. But the Mongol Tartar yoke, which was thousands of years ago, oh yeah, that was Ukrainian, or hundreds rather. But with that said, Ukrainian historian also suggests that Jesus was Ukrainian. I mean, you guys really need to brush up on your Ukrainian history. You really don't know it. If you don't know that Jesus was Ukrainian, yeah, it's a legitimate video. I watched it. Ukrainian historian explains how Jesus and his apostles, all but Judas for some reason, I think that historian's last name is Bobak or something along those lines. I have videos on my other page of it. So he said that, oh yeah, Ukrainian, such an ancient nation. And lots of people don't realize that Jesus was Ukrainian. And his apostles were all but Judas. Judas was a Semite, said Ukrainian historian. So make of it what it will. Yeah, they rewrote history. They make whatever they want out of whatever is modern day Ukraine. It's insane. The books. By the way, John McDougan made a very interesting documentary about Ukraine. And the documentary actually about the books that Russian soldiers found in the territory that was formerly Ukrainian and Ukrainian libraries. Oh my gosh, the books. So they were showing some children's books. One book reads, Me and NATO, a child's book. I don't know, 3-5-year-old has to learn about me and NATO. And guess who is sponsoring these books? On top of the book, it's written US aid. Yes, you and I, we pay for that stuff. So Ukrainian children could get indoctrinated about NATO. Yeah, hello. Yeah, let's all applaud. Our children in America cannot afford, their parents cannot afford basics. Because look at the grocery prices. Did you go to the store recently? That's like a new record-breaking bill every time you go to the grocery store. And it will continue this way. Because we are supporting Ukraine. We're not supporting our own people. Well, our own people live in the streets of California and sleep on the streets. And throughout the states, drive through United States, you will see the level of poverty. I did. It's insane. We are no longer the hegemon that we think we are. Just look at our cities. Look at the level of our people struggling. And I always say Americans must live in dignity. Where's our dignity? Our politicians sold us out. Their money laundering operation called Ukraine, anti-Russia project called Ukraine, is creating the hardship here at home for Americans. Look at our south border. We have a full-scale invasion here on our south border in the United States, and our politicians shell the money to protect Ukraine's border. It's insane. I hope people who are watching me are not insane. But guys, there is so much to say. Sorry if I go forth and back, but a lot of different pieces come to mind, and let me check on your comments and see what we have. Great job on history. I see Patrick said, well said, Paula Whelan. That's great. How many more comments do we have? Biden and his son. Yes, comment from Liz Davis. Biden and his sex-manic son have an interest in business dealings in Ukraine and China. Great point. Great point. Oh, I got my lipstick all messed up, guys. Sorry about that. But with that said, Biden and his son, when Biden was vice president, he was in Ukraine every week, flying in there, making deals, talking to people, presenting himself. And of course, then the coup. Obama, Biden, McCain, again, Lindsey Graham, Victoria Nuland, Romney's, John Kerry, Pelosi, all of them were dreaming and plotting together with the EU to sponsor that coup in Ukraine, because Ukraine had the president at that time, Yanukovych, who was presented with the papers for Ukraine to join EU. And of course, he came up with, I believe there was either the 30 points that he said, no, we can't accept this. We can continue talking about this. But if we accept this proposal as it is, and Ukraine joins EU, all of our factories will have to stop, because we cannot meet EU standards overnight. Our people will lose their jobs. So he argumented his decision and said that let's talk about it. I don't refuse that Ukraine now may not join EU. I'm okay with that, but let's negotiate and make the conditions more favorable. Otherwise, our industries will die and our people will lose their jobs. And obviously, that's not good for Ukraine. But you see, the Biden and Obama, the Nuland, the Hillary, all the hooplas and Lindsey Grahams and EU, they didn't like it too much that he tried to assert himself this way. So in 2013, Victoria Nuland hosted a meeting with Kiev, Ukrainian businessman, and said, I think it was the end of 2013/2014 beginning. She said, well, the United States invested $5 billion to make sure that Ukraine will have democratic changes. We are bringing democratic changes to Ukraine. $5 billion of our taxpayer money, again, back in 2013, 2014. Imagine that amount of money. And read the coup, right? Because we know that Victoria Nuland handpicked Ukrainian coup government after the president Yanukovych was finally ousted by the coup. The militarized Nazi coups who came to power, stormed the parliament with weapons, said, you get out, and president had to flee, fearing for his life. So Victoria Nuland handpicked with the phone conversation to, at the time, Jeffrey Piat, I think his name, American ambassador to Ukraine, handpicked Ukrainian government, coup government, illegally placed government via coup, right? So with that said, as soon as that coup happened and president was ousted, guess what? Coming back to Lee David. The Biden son gets a job in 2014 following the coup for the Burisma oil, the oil and gas company of Ukraine. I believe last time they mentioned he was making something upwards of 50,000 a month. As a chief legal counsel, he joins Ukrainian oil firm. What? Just after the coup. Coincidence. Oh my gosh, this is what a coincidence. Everything in life is just a coincidence when it comes to Biden. Of course, you can't talk about it because if you do, remember Elon Musk Twitter files? If you do talk about Biden and Hunter Biden, oh my gosh, Twitter will ban the account and Twitter will make sure nobody sees your posts and Facebook will do the same. Mark Zuckerberg admitted in the interview to Joe Rogan, saying that FBI came and told him to suppress the story about Hunter Biden's laptop when that was the hot thing, and that was just before the elections, the Biden and Trump elections. So with that said, if you talk about Hunter Biden and Biden dealings, the FBI directly goes to Twitter. The former FBI legal counsel was a counsel of Twitter, and Elon Musk recently revealed through Matt Taibbi different Musk/Taibbi Twitter file, what they call trenches of information. And one of them was that the guy who was a former FBI legal counsel deleted a bunch of documents that pointed out to the suppression of the Hunter Biden story by Twitter. What? So yeah, we cannot know it. The media is complicit in silencing it, and nobody can find out what's happening. And the truth is basically being banned from all the media platforms. It's insane. Let's see who I did not post a comment yet. Yes, I like, Johnny said they will find to the last Ukrainian. They absolutely will. Lindsey Graham, a Republican senator, was given an interview standing next to Chris Murphy, who is a Democratic senator. And Lindsey Graham, and I quote, said, "I like the structure and the path we're on. As soon as we provide Ukraine with economic support and weapons, Ukrainian people will fight to the last Ukrainian person." Look it up. I have a video on my page with Lindsey Graham, and you could Google it on YouTube. It's insane. He is saying that Ukraine, and he likes the path that we're on, we United States. He likes that Ukraine will fight to the last Ukrainian person. Emphasis on the word person. He doesn't even say the last Ukrainian soldier, even though that would be despicable of its own to suggest that Ukrainian soldiers to die for proxy war that Lindsey Graham and his crony donors don't want to go mess with Russia, but they picked Ukrainians to sacrifice their lives to go mess with Russia. That's insane. While Lindsey Graham is sitting happily and drinking whatever he's drinking, his tea at his summer house, someplace in Florida. And Ukrainian soldiers are living in the trenches, half filled with water and ice. I've seen those videos, those poor guys, the Ukrainian guys that making the video, he says, "How am I supposed to get into this trench? There is water up to his waistline and ice, and their boots are soaking with the mud. They cannot walk, they're so heavy." But Lindsey Graham, he doesn't mind that Ukraine will find not even to the last Ukrainian soldier, again, which would be horrific to begin with, but to the last Ukrainian person. That means everyone. Person means children, women, elderly, men, everyone. And our senator, Lindsey Graham, Republican senator, standing next to Chris Murphy, a Democrat senator, so they're all in agreement on that, is okay that Ukrainian nation will disappear from the map and disappear from the earth with the last Ukrainian person. So I don't care what party line you're on, they both are crazy. They're telling us that we're saving Ukraine while they're hell-bent on destroying Ukraine and Ukrainian people. So it's tragic. But the bigger tragedy for Americans to believe the lies that these people are telling us. Because at least when you see the truth, you could do something about it. You could call your representative, you could call your senator if he is Lindsey Graham or whoever is your senator and tell them, stop this Ukraine war, get to the peace talk and negotiating table with Russia now. At least if you know the truth, you could do something about it. You could talk to your friends about it. You could open some other people's eyes about it. But if you don't know the truth, if you are being sold lies, if you are being robbed as American taxpayer, and Zelensky is brought to Senate and to Congress to visit and meet with Biden and Pelosi and give press conferences and telling us that, oh yeah, it's not a charity that you Americans are doing, it's an investment. So he's okay with American politicians basically sanctioning the murder of his own people on this war that should never have happened in the first place, should Zelensky follow Minsk agreements. But he never did. And Angela Merkel now, and Hollander also second that in his recent interview, he said, oh yeah, we knew Minsk agreement was just to buy Ukraine more time to build its NATO army, NATO trained army, so Ukraine could fight. And fight Donbass, and obviously Russia is next after Donbass. That's why Russia got up and said enough is enough. But recent interview, Mitch McConnell said, no change for policy to support Ukraine. Ukraine will have enough money, and whatever money we have to give, we'll give it to Ukraine. So you all are waiting. January 3rd, new Congress gets sworn in. More Republicans, more sense. Well, Mitch McConnell just told you, no change. Money to Ukraine will keep flowing as it does. And he obviously knows. So he's our chief senator for Republicans, and he obviously knows what he's talking about. No change. It's a bipartisan consent. There is a couple of renegades in Congress that speak against this insanity. The latest bill that Ukraine had, $45 billion on top of whatever the billions and the 100 or the 60, you pick your figure, but it's close to the 100 billion now. Now we have another 45. And of course, they say not all the money given on right away, and maybe it will be time, but it doesn't matter. It's a commitment. We, American taxpayers, right now are paying for pensions, government salaries, we're paying employees, we're paying social package of Ukrainian citizens. What? We have a 51st state on our books. Your taxpayers, yes. That's why you can't afford your groceries or your gas bill, or the inflation is crazy, or the mortgage rate rising up, and we have a recession with constant mortgage rates rising up so many months in a row. Of course, Biden will argue that, but we know. We don't need to listen to Biden giving us a fantasy. We are in recession. We have mortgage rates rising on a subsequent amount of months in a row. And that is the sign of recession. But no, we keep giving money to Ukraine. Now we have the latest bill, 1.7 trillion. Congratulations, Congress. You on the road to oblivion, and you're taking us with you. It's insane. If you guys don't understand that, our congressman, again, for a couple of exceptions, I think there was a senator from Arizona who said something about, we're not paying for Biden's family secrets in Ukraine. If he has that, he has to go do it himself. But it's only a couple. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene a couple of times spoke against it. I know Rand Paul, he wanted to place some accountability in the last multi-billion-dollar bill, but of course, Senate didn't want it. They don't want accountability. Rand Paul suggested that we need to have Inspector General to detail where the money is going and how it's been spent in Ukraine. And nobody wanted to do it in Congress, in Senate. They said, no, we don't want it. And how dare you, Rand Paul, hold up Ukrainian aid bill by demanding accountability in the bill so it would be written as an amendment. Can you believe it? These people do not have your best interest in mind. They're working for a foreign government, for Ukraine. Yes. So it's insane. I don't know how many more times can I say insane before. By the way, to sum up the year 2022, Google it up. May 19th, I believe, this year, 2022. Senate has rejected $48 billion bill, which would have provided assistance to small businesses, American small businesses, the gyms, the restaurants, and all the businesses who suffered from COVID closures. $48 billion bill was proposed to the Senate and was rejected May 19th. But the same day, the $40 billion bill to Ukraine was approved in Senate. Same day. Google it up. I can even tell you The Hill. Google the news source, newspaper, The Hill on Google. The Hill, and type in Senate rejects $48 billion bill assistance to the small American businesses who suffered from COVID closures, including gyms, restaurants, and so forth. And citing the inflation fears. Oh, they are worried about inflation, so they do not want to vote for the help to American businesses, small businesses who suffered from pandemic closures. But that same day, and that same Senate, they are voting in favor of giving $40 billion to Ukraine. Understand who these people work for, not for us. They sold us out a long time ago. Bipartisan support. Not to small American business and people who suffered from pandemic closures. No. For those people, we're worried about inflation. But when it comes to Ukraine, 40 billion, you see, 48, 40. 48 to American people, 40 to Ukraine. 48, a no-go. 40 is a go to Ukraine. Same day, same Senate. Not enough votes to pass the bill to help Americans, but plenty to pass the bill to help, quote unquote, Ukraine. That's year 2022. That's one of my biggest shockers that I've seen this year. That tells you that our country is on the brink of insanity, not to mention nuclear war with Russia or whoever else wants to fight us. I mean, we're making quote unquote friends with lightning speed. We aggravated China right now. We like to aggravate the Saudis. I mean, who we don't like to aggravate? Korean guy. I mean, anybody who wants to fight us, I think at some point they will just say, you know what? You guys, you had enough. This show has been on the road for too long. So we have to pray for our country, pray for America. I don't know, our politicians are insane. They are bringing us to nuclear war closer and closer each day. They are bringing us to direct military confrontation on the ground with Russia day to day. They don't have a reverse gear. They don't know when to stop. They could care less about American people, American small businesses. They just serve themselves and their corporate donors or their corporate special interests. I don't know. Look at Biden, and you can't even talk about because they got media on their side, and the media suppresses any truth and all truth, bans people. The FBI is asking the Twitter and Facebook to suppress the information. And of course, they suppress it under the guise of, that's Russian propaganda. So you can't, show this information to people. Well, I see. So finds out that truth is now being labeled Russian propaganda. So we have a new label for truth. Truth is new Russian propaganda. Okay. Yeah. So if you don't want something and you want to hide it from American people, the easiest way is to label it a Russian propaganda. Then nobody would want to learn it. Like the same time when I share the RT links to my articles, and they put this red line, warning, you are following the link sponsored by Russia, something state media. Why don't they put link warning like this on BBC or Daily Beast? I don't get warnings like that if I post the links from those pages. Why they singled out Russia? Why is all this discrimination? Okay, guys, I'm talking too much. Ron Lucarelli, yes. This is Ron from LA with wife Larissa trapped in Ukraine, caring for ailing mother. Yelena, you are so right on. Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much. I hope your wife and her mom would feel better. My heart goes out to them. I know people over there right now have scheduled electricity. There is not so much going on as far as infrastructure is collapsing. People are standing in lines sometimes for humanitarian aid for like one little canned food and piece of bread and some technical water. They have electricity for just few hours, and sometimes it's at night, not even during the daytime. And talk about humanitarian aid. I watched Ukrainian volunteer. I mentioned his name before. His name was Alexei Oskar, and he spoke against the theft, a massive theft of humanitarian aid that all the countries sent to Ukraine that ends up on the store shelves. And according to him, some of those members of Zelensky's cabinet, some of his former friends. By the way, he appointed a lot of his former friends from his talk show and his stand-up comedy show to the very important positions. So his former chief of staff mentioned that too, and some other people I watched the interviews of. They said that when Zelensky became a president, he pretty much gave the positions to all his former comedy actor friends. And his former chief of staff in the interview said that everybody is afraid and nobody is doing any work because they're all afraid that if they do something, one of Zelensky's appointed friends may get upset and call him and tell him how upset they are. So they prefer to do nothing instead of do something that may upset one of Zelensky's appointee friends in a high power office. So the former chief of staff of Zelensky, Bogdan, said that they just push papers from one table to another and don't make any decisions because they're all afraid to upset Zelensky and his friends, who he's placed in the powerful positions in his cabinets. And of course, I think the Mr. Yermak is his former producer from his show, Servant of the People, if my memory serves me well. Yeah, we have Beth here. Beth saying they're scheming foreign aid. That's what it seems. And you know what happened to that volunteer who spoke about the theft of the humanitarian aid? He said they're stealing it by train cars, that massive. But as soon as he talked about it, he also talked about the fact that the weapons don't make it to the front lines, that the guys complain. He also, Ukrainian volunteer, talked about the families of the missing soldiers. And a lot of missing soldiers' families, they actually basically cannot find the truth about what happened. And the commanders give them run around. So when this volunteer tries to speak on behalf of the mothers and the wives and the sisters, and when he talks about this humanitarian aid theft, it finds out that Ukrainian SBU, that Secret Service arrests him and brings him up in front of the judge, and the judge puts him on the 60 days house arrest. So you can't speak anything. You can't say it. You can't criticize Zelensky or whatever the regime of Zelensky is doing. Or they quickly sent the special services to arrest the person. And he's talked about some other people who were arrested and put in jail and prison, who also tried to speak up. Ukraine has a martial law. They cannot organize, they cannot protest. All independent media are banned by Zelensky. All the opposition party leaders are banned by Zelensky, put in jail. So when Biden tells you and Pelosi that we need American people, we need to sacrifice our lifestyle and our standard of living to help Ukraine fight for democracy, they're selling you the bag of goods. That's all I have to say about that. Yeah. We have Maximiliano Marziano, same in Germany, truth equals Russia propaganda. Exactly. That's what's happening. That's what's happening in Ukraine. So we have Deborah here. It's the same old story. Oil and gas, quote unquote, national interest in Ukraine, Crimea, and Russia. Yes. By the way, did you guys know that Zelensky always screams and says, oh, nobody should take any money from Russia, that's Putin's bloody money, and don't trade with them and make sanctions and don't accept their bloody, bloody money, bloody whatever goods. While Ukraine, nicely so, receives the transit fees from Russia for Russian gas going to Europe through Ukraine. And Ukraine makes a couple of billion a year, a few billion here and there. So Zelensky tells all of European people to suffer and not trade with Russia, while Ukraine is making money, transit fees from Russia on Russia's gas delivered to Europe. So you do understand hypocrisy, right? Hypocrisy is all over this Ukraine scenario. We have Holly Sapelisak. Tell me more. I do not know a whole lot about him. Yes, a lot. I will say bits and pieces about Zelensky. There's a lot actually to talk about him. There's interesting interviews. I watched several interviews. I watched the interview with Zelensky himself before he ran for office, after he ran for office. Obviously, he loves giving interviews, right? I watched his chief of staff, people who worked with him, for him, nearby him, people who criticize him, hours and hours of interview. What interesting was that his former chief of staff, the guy who helped him run for president, said there was another candidate, the guy from Western Ukraine, who was considered to run for presidency, but they selected Zelensky. Why? Because Zelensky was Russian speaking, and he was very much from the central Ukraine, which is historically Russian area from the Russian Empire, right? So they actually picked Zelensky for him being appealing as a quote unquote to the wider, almost pro-Russian audience, and turned him into Nazi. You believe that? So there was another guy that was considered to run for presidency, and he was from the Western Ukraine. That guy would be really from the very Ukrainian oriented, nationalistic, historically area of Western Ukraine. But Zelensky is from Kryvyi Rog. That's like central Ukraine, southern central. So his former chief of staff, the guy who helped him run, he said, yeah, we were considering this other guy. He was running too. But Zelensky's appeal and why we sort of bet on him as a horse was he appealed to the wider Ukraine, to more moderate Ukraine, to pro-Russian, for Russian-speaking Ukraine. So the guy runs on the sentiment of being pro-Russian, pro-central, central Ukraine, none of this nationalist agenda. And then when he becomes the president, he turns Ukraine into a Nazi nationalist state. Wow, that's insane. But that's why Zelensky was picked, according to the guy who helped him run, because of his universal appeal and basically appeal to the pro-Russian people. Only once he is elected, the people who have anything to do with Russia now are banned and prosecuted. What a turn, Zelensky. What a turn. What a betrayal. ask me about that. So we have another comment. We have a comment. I would say I would read, but I don't want to mispronounce because I can obviously read in Greek your name. Thank you very much for your comment. Catherine the Great loved very much the Greeks, and so she helped 34,000 Greeks to go to Tavrida, today's Crimea. And so she began the became the glorious savior of them from the barbaric Turkish, and from that epoch until to this day, the Greeks have as their country the Great Russia, Crimea, and the Azovsty Nazis. Zelensky has canceled them as Greek minority. Yeah, I have to say, if you ever go to Crimea, even not only Crimea, the southern part of Ukraine, you will find a lots of ancient Greek cities there. There is ancient Greek city, Olvia. There is ancient Greek city in, I believe, city of Sevastopol, also near Crimea, southern part of that Crimea peninsula, a little bit above. There's the ancient amphitheaters. So in ancient history, when Greeks had another tyrant that would rise in Greece, they would basically sail and settled in those areas. Yeah, Crimea had lots of, like I said, it has lots of ethnic groups, lots of nationalities. There was Tatars, there were Turkish people, there were Greek people. Of course, there was Russians, and now there are Ukrainians. I mean, and then there is Russians. And I'm sure there were some Mongols and everybody else. I mean, it's a one big melting pot. By the way, guys, everybody who's watching, I have this right here, as you could see on my screen, is the QR code. This is how you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Ariguzo Chuka, good word, dear. Keep it up. The truth must surely prevail. Here is another one from Andrei Rihak. Since 2014, only the Ukraine and USA were consistently voting against the UN resolution on combating glorification of Nazism, neo-Nazism, and other practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. This year, 2022, the number of countries joining Ukraine and USA in voting against the resolution is 50. Most of the quote-unquote democratic, quote-unquote civilized West. The argument, Nazism is Russian propaganda. Welcome to 2023. Excellent summary, Andre. Excellent summary. Yes, if you guys look the years before, every year there would be Russia who would bring up resolution to UN to vote against glorification of Nazism. And at first, I think there was Canada, United States, and Ukraine. Then it was just United States and Ukraine. And then again, I think United States and Ukraine. But this year, they all lost their minds. So, and those votes, the United States and Ukraine voted against the resolution that Russia proposed to stop glorification of fascism and Nazism. So Ukraine and America were pretty much the only ones. And of course, I heard the argument, people were saying, well, but America just does it because it likes freedom of speech. I'm sure it's not why America does it, because obviously now that we see that America now supports Nazis in Ukraine and we're finding them. So don't give me this, America votes against Russia's resolution to condemn glorification of fascism and Nazism because America cares about freedom of speech. It doesn't. Look at what's happening to our social media accounts. It banned people for speaking the truth. America doesn't care about free speech. It uses the excuse to keep glorifying Nazis. including in Ukraine. So great comment, Andrei. Exactly. Welcome to 2023. Whose comment did I miss? I think I am good. Are Ukrainians his people, or does he has another nationality? Jacob, the question about Zelensky, again, it goes back to Soviet Union when Zelensky was born. He obviously, when he was born, my thought, it was still a Soviet Union back then, I'm thinking. I don't think he is that young. But to put it this way, during Soviet Union, the nationality was sort of like that. Basically, it was something that is only manifested itself in your culture, but it was not so distinguished, because in the Soviet Union, everybody was considered Soviet. So being a Soviet topped all of your national identity. Whether you're Russian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Ukrainian, whether you're Tajikistan, Armenian, Azerbaijani, you still have your culture and your nationality, but because you're part of this Soviet Union, that's your identity, more so than your per se identity as an ethnic group, because now you're part of the bigger group. You're a Soviet. Like we here, everyone has a little bit of our own culture in America, but we're under this big umbrella called America, and we call ourselves Americans. So that's what was happening during Soviet era. Everybody was considered themselves Soviet people, like we consider ourselves American people. You know what I mean? When you go travel across abroad, even if you come from some other culture, you would say, hi, I'm American, right? Of course, you could say I'm from this country or that country originally, but if you're American citizen, usually you'd say I'm American. So that same things was happening when Ukraine was part of Soviet Union. People in Ukraine were considered Soviet people. And then they could further down either have more of a Russian culture, Ukrainian culture, but main language was Russian, Ukrainian language was the second language, mandatory taught at school. The only people who were excused from learning Ukrainian, it could be military family members, because those people moved a lot during Soviet Union. You had 15 republics, each had the second language, a different language. So the military family children may have been exempt if they wish not to study a second language, but everybody else was a second language mandatory, and that was Ukrainian. So during Soviet time, Russian main language, everybody spoke Russian, official documents, all Russian. And all of a sudden, when Ukraine becomes independent, slowly but surely, that process changes. So I don't know what Zelensky considers himself. Biden calls him Jewish. I noticed how they Ukrainized Zelensky's last name. They Ukrainized his wife's last name. His last name is Vladimir Zelensky, and his wife would be Yelena Zelenskaya. But of course, in Ukrainian, now they call her Olena Zelenska. Totally Ukrainized name. It doesn't even sound like the name that he was probably born with. Would like to see what's in his birth certificate. But all birth certificates during Soviet Union were issued, I almost think, in two languages, or at least Russian would be the primary two. So in other words, this whole mess, how Ukraine, when it became independent, basically forgot and decides to disassociate and break with anything and everything Russian. It's insanity, because there is people who have been living together in peace with Russian people, Russian ethnic groups for generations. They intermarried, their family members, their grandkids, their children, they're all together. It's insanity to have Russians fight Ukrainians. It's like to have Indiana fight Michigan or Arizona fight Texas. You used to be a part of the same country, Soviet Union, Russians and Ukrainians, and you encompass hundreds of ethnic groups. When we say Ukrainian, it could be hundreds of ethnic groups that live on the territory of current Ukraine. Same goes for Russia. And to create this narrative when these people have to kill each other, when they have family members, ties, photographs, the ancestors fought against Hitler together in World War II. They fought together with Americans against Hitler. These people are tied by blood, by DNA. And for our American politicians present to us like, oh, here's Russians over there, and here's Ukrainians over there, and there's totally separate entities, and they hate each. None of that. None of that. These people lived together for generations. They intermarried. Their business deals interwoven. They traded together. It's insane. And this basically is the best picture. If United States, one of the states would start fighting with another state, you'd have family in both states, likely living on the border, next to the border. And you'd have people travel. You have grandkids from one state, a brother-in-law from another state. Yeah, that's kind of like what's happening. So, like I said, lots of nationalities in Ukraine. And there is Ukrainians who live in Russia, Russians who live in Ukraine. And it's basically a brotherly bloodshed that America is sponsoring. I want to say to Lindsey Graham, who said that Ukraine will fight to the last Ukrainian person, and he likes the direction that this is going. There's a special place in hell, Lindsey Graham. There's a special place in hell for people who wish the other people fight to the last person. There's a special place in hell. So who did I not mention? I think I mentioned everyone. I think I did everyone. So it's probably time to close an alone chat and say, guys, it has been a fun day. I know that all of you are probably eating your wonderful cakes and getting ready for the midnight ball in New York. As you make your wishes for the upcoming New Year's, well, lots of people do it differently. I've seen some people in some traditions actually write them, and then they burn them and they put them in a champagne glass, the ashes, and they drink it. Don't do it. But I've seen all kinds of wild ways that people want to make their wishes come true. I know that on my wish list for 2023, peace definitely is on top. And my first wish for this planet, for Ukraine, for Russia, for America, for people of Europe, for people of Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Canada, Mexico, everybody, China, Japan, you name it, India, Africa, everybody who is watching me, to have peace. Peace is the most important thing in the world. If we have peace, we can function, we can meet each other, we can work, we can achieve, we can create, we can be human, and we can contribute to society in a meaningful way to prosper us and to prosper the societies and our families. If we don't have peace, the contributions are turning into destruction, but by corrupt politicians. So we cannot allow it. Let's hope that God blesses America. There's a lot that we have to answer for, that we're doing to our own people, that we're doing to Ukrainian people, that we're doing to Russian people. Our corrupt politicians just don't know when to stop. But on a positive note, I did make tiramisu yesterday, so I am going to probably have a cup of tea and have tiramisu after this wonderful chat. If anybody is cooking or baking, yes, I did. So it was a lot of work, but I'm glad I did it. So it's a special occasion. It's a New Year's Eve. I love you all, guys, and I thank you all for watching. I see all your little emojis. I see your likes, your hearts, your wows, your sad and your angry little faces. Yeah, I would have a little angry face every time I said a few words myself, because obviously a lot of words I say is what our politicians doing, and it definitely calls for an angry emoji, what these people are doing to us and to Ukrainian people and to the entire world. Gosh, look at Europe, the industrialization of Germany and Europe, Nord Stream 2, all gone. And of course, we know Biden promised that it will be gone, and Victoria Nuland promised that it will be gone. So I know Trump talked about it a little bit. So yeah, no matter what country in the world you are and you're watching, just know that I'm sending you my love. I'm sending you the wishes for peace, for joy, for health, for prosperity. And say a prayer for Ukrainian people, for Russian people, and all the multiple nationalities that live inside Ukraine and Russia, because they're not only Russian and Ukrainians who live in those countries. For all the multiple cultures of the world, we wish for peace and prosperity, and for politicians to finally see the light that they can no longer rule over us and make us fight brother against brother, sister against sister, family against family. We as humans, we as people have to say no. We're not going to do it. We don't want to die just because you want to make an extra buck and line your corrupt donors and politicians' cronies' pockets with blood and tears and sweat of American taxpayers. No. So, Happy New Year, guys. Love, peace, joy, happiness. Stay safe. Have your wonderful cakes and treats. And my heart is with you. You know I care. And the reason I talk so much is because there's so much to say. And everything comes to my mind when I read some of your comments. And it makes me feel connected with you. I'm glad you're commenting. I'm glad you're here. And I thank you all very much. And I have another comment here. Says exactly. And again, good work. Well, thank you, guys. It's been a long talk, but try to go have fun now. Year 2023, here we come. Certainly make some New Year's resolutions. What I'm going to do is probably right now either have my famously made tiramisu and then go for a walk in the park, or do the walk and then have tiramisu. But regardless, I will be watching the New York crystal ball drop on at the midnight hour, and I'll be toasting to the new year and hope for the peace, joy, and happiness to come to each one of you, your families, your lives, to the world, and to the nations across the globe, to live in peace and harmony with each other. Thank you, guys. Say goodbye. Love you all. Thank you.